So you'd become a Bitcoiner now.
I don't know, maybe. Yeah.
You had
Yes,
also become an activist.
Yes, yeah. So early this year, I stopped my older job, that job at Ridgely Walsh, and wanted to do something different, and wanted to go back to my dream, which has always been to connect with the African continent in one way or another. And I was in Costa Rica with you, actually, and asking him all these questions. Where can I find this knowledge? Where can I read this? Where is this research? Where is it done? And you told me that there wasn't. And you had thought about this with a few other people. Maybe some of you guys know Eric Hersman or Farida or Ojoma with B-Trust. Farida is with Africa Bitcoin Conference. And they had seen through their own separate work this need of information about the adoption of Bitcoin on the continent, but also the need of putting the African voice in this dialogue, because Africa is a place where many people are actually utilizing Bitcoin peer-to-peer, but people who are researching about it are coming from the outside. They don't fully understand the what's going on with people. They don't have the touch that's sometimes needed into telling the story. And there are some people in Africa who are doing this research, but unfortunately their work is buried in two different reports. They're not being cited, they're not being recognized in a way that allows their work to be seen globally or even regionally. And so there was this need which they created, like Africa Bitcoin Institute, to have better empirical research done in a critical and smart way that can help policymakers understand a little bit more what Bitcoin is about. That's research that's done by people on the continent, so when they're thinking about these regulations, they're not just copy and paste what's happening in Washington, D.C. or around the world. This need for developers to be able to build new tools based on empirical research of what's working and what's not working, not just what you feel in your local community. The need to have the scholarship of people writing about this and talking about this issue. The need to Bitcoin being used so much in Africa, they need to have that voice be at the global level as well too, and people telling their own stories, And so the Africa Bitcoin Institute comes to fill this gap, and the main part is this of creating the data, creating the knowledge, so people can make better decisions about the Bitcoin future of Africa. And it resonated a lot with me because I could see the aspect of my human rights, democracy, and freedom work in this perspective, being able to put people who've been unbanked to having more financial inclusion. And then the bigger aspect of growth, what does it mean for people to own their money in a way that doesn't depend on government's regulations and inflations that are going up and down all the time? What does it mean to be able to collect money from outside of Africa, from through remittance, and thinking about Bitcoin reserves and other things like that, these more bigger questions that I had myself, before the advocacy human rights started working. I started doing that in my global development, international development past, and so it linked very much things that I care about. And so I was like, why not? Let me try this. Let me help. And I also get to learn at the same time. So personally, it was kind of selfish because that would allow me to learn more and understand more what's happening by getting involved in this project.
And you've been doing it now for a few months. What have you learned? What have you seen?
Well, what I've seen. So one of my biggest takeaway is that a lot is being done around Bitcoin in the Anglophone world in Africa and not so much in the Francophone world. And I would even argue that people in the Francophone countries even need it more because they're dependent on the CFA, which is controlled by central banks in Europe. So basically, people in Europe decide the future of the currency in 15 countries in Africa. And so the money is not flowing there so much in terms of investment. So that's something that I realized. Also, the regulations around many countries are very different. People don't fully understand what Bitcoin is about. People are afraid of it. Many countries in Africa are unfortunately autocratic. And so there's a level of control that government want to keep that's forcing them not to look at the opportunities of what Bitcoin can do. And so there's a big spectrum of one, and the misunderstanding of what mining is about as well too, from a climate perspective, a lot of people care about the climate, but any climate person, if you tell them about Bitcoin mining, they'll tell you this is the worst thing in the world, and it's much more nuanced than that. And I learned a lot of that over the last couple of months, and I hope to learn more with the team that we're putting together that will do more in-depth research. And we want to make sure that our fellows are not just Bitcoiners. We want them to come from different backgrounds, from economics, from finance, from social sciences, and other backgrounds to make sure that we're representing all the needs, but also bringing different views of what the opportunities and possibilities can be for Bitcoin.